So when we're trying to strengthen up our suprahyoid oblique musculature, which is basically muscles that are kind of between the jaw and our hyoid bone, which is in our throat right here, kind of like throat neck area through here. Basically, a lot of these guys are responsible for jaw opening. So if we have some chronic tension in our muscles that close the jaw, our masseter, our like temporalis, a couple of those guys that typically we get a lot of our trigger points and pain from. We have to kind of train this guy up to help it out. This guy also ties into the deep neck flexors a little bit functionally. So this has some extra carryover, especially when we have a lot of chronic tension in our SCMs and our suboccipital muscles and all that other kind of fun stuff. So these guys can come together in our deep neck flexor series. We actually use this muscle group to help facilitate that a little bit to get everything else to kind of relax. So basically, the way we're going to work on the suprahyoid musculature for our beginner level is going to be jaw wiggle, which basically the initial rules are we're just going to have our lips together, but our teeth are going to be slightly apart. And we're going to use a little bit of tongue pressure either into the top of the mouth or kind of the back of the front teeth. There's an alternate thing where we can also make kind of a fat tongue where we flatten it out, but usually the first two work a little bit better. So we try either one of those to see, do we feel almost like a little tenting effect when we contract into there to see can we start to activate these guys to get a little extra opening, a little extra opening muscle pattern to see if we can get a little more sweep from underneath, and we won't get any of the dominance from the lateral pterygoid up top. As far as for like the opening jutting motion. So basically, our beginner version, we're just going to take tiny little bites that eventually we'll get to about 2/3 open. So to make sure we're firing the right muscles, we're going to just take a thumb, kind of put it underneath the jaw a little bit here, kind of right behind the bone, and we push the tongue into the roof of the mouth or into the kind of back of the front teeth. What we want to feel is almost our thumb get like pushed out of the jaw a little bit, just kind of like that, just like a little bit of a push down. So we want to feel like this muscle kind of tense up a little bit. So as we get that little extra activation, we keep the lips closed, or the like lips together, the teeth slightly apart. We're going to make tiny little bites. So we want to maintain this contraction. We have our tiny little bites. We can do that for like 30, 45 seconds a minute. And I usually got to do this a bunch of times a day to start to get an effect, just because of the constant use of the mouth. And the need to really balance out that tone. As that feels pretty solid and we don't feel any additional tension up top, and we the one other major form fault is if we do this, do we start to get a jut forward motion, or do we start to get a little bit of suboccipital extension? So instead of opening the jaw on the head like this, we'll actually start to move the head on the jaw a little. So make sure you don't have too much pressure on that hand as you go up and down. So this should be a nice, good posture, nice and tall. We don't get any like a little bit of a suboccipital extension as a compensatory motion. That's actually an offshoot of one of the jaw opening tests we do in the beginning when we screen you out. So as this feels better, and we're like, okay, this is good, no major deviations, we can go from the tiny bites to like 1/3 of the way open, eventually progressing to about 2/3 open. So eventually it'd be lips together, and the teeth about 2/3 of the way apart. With the tiny bites this here, are we still getting this activation down here as we increase our jaw opening? A little bit of pressure, we can eventually get a little extra resistance from the thumb on here. Initially, we want to make sure we're not getting so much that we're actually getting like a tilt back motion. But basically, well, we describe it during treatment, but typically this ends up being several times a day. Sometimes you just tell someone to do it every time they hit a stoplight or every couple hours, something like that. So basically, that's the jaw wiggle exercise for a little bit of suprahyoid activation, part of our deep cervical flexor and TMD rehab. So any questions or comments, give us a call or email. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.